Welcome to Future Talk. This is the program that looks at the global impact of technology, both the promises and the perils, and tries to figure out just where this new technology is taking us. On today's program, we're going to talk about global climate change and how technology has helped to create the problem and how technology might be able to help solve it. We'll be focusing on the work of the U.S.-China Green Energy Council. It's a group of American and Chinese citizens that includes scientists, businessmen, academics, and government policymakers, and the goal is to find ways that the U.S. and China, which are the two biggest industrial powers and therefore the two biggest polluters, can work together to produce cleaner energy. Jim Caldwell is on the board of directors of the council. He's also the president of E3 Regenesis Solutions Incorporated, where he works on green energy alliances and energy systems integration. Cliff Nakayama is also on the board of directors, and he's on the council's transportation task force as well. He has extensive experience in the automotive industry, and he's an expert on electric cars. He's also the managing director of Mostwell International, which provides services to American companies that do business in China and vice versa. Before we start the discussion, we have a short video from National Geographic which illustrates the problem that the Council is trying to solve. Let's take a look.
For 2.5 million years, the Earth's climate has fluctuated, cycling from ice ages to warmer periods. But in the last century, the planet's temperature has risen unusually fast, about 1.2 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists believe it's human activity that's driving the temperatures up, a process known as global warming. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began, factories, power plants, and eventually cars have burned fossil fuels such as oil and coal, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases trap heat near the Earth through a naturally occurring process called the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect begins with the sun and the energy it radiates to the Earth. The Earth and the atmosphere absorb some of this energy, while the rest is radiated back into space. Naturally occurring gases in the atmosphere trap some of this energy and reflect it back, warming the Earth. Scientists now believe that the greenhouse effect is being intensified by the extra greenhouse gases that humans have released. Evidence for global warming includes a recent string of very warm years. Scientists report that 1998 was the warmest year in measured history, with 2005 coming in second. Meanwhile, readings taken from ice cores show that the greenhouse gases carbon dioxide and methane have hit their highest levels in the past 420,000 years. Arctic sea ice is also shrinking. According to NASA studies, the extent of Arctic sea ice has declined about 10% in the last 30 years. As long as industrialized nations consume energy and developing countries increase their fossil fuel consumption, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will continue to rise. Researchers predict that temperatures will increase about 2 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. What's less certain is what rising temperatures mean for the planet. Some climate models predict subtle changes. Others forecast rising sea levels which could flood coastal areas around the world. Weather patterns could change, making hurricanes more frequent. Severe droughts could become more common in warm areas, and species unable to adapt to the changing conditions would face extinction. Although much remains to be learned about global warming, many organizations advocate cutting greenhouse gas emissions to reduce the impact of global warming. Consumers can help by saving energy around the house, switching to compact fluorescent light bulbs, and driving fewer miles in the car each week. These simple changes may help keep the Earth cooler in the future.
Jim, just how urgent do you think the problem of global warming really is? Some people think it is the most urgent problem facing mankind. Others say that, maybe that's a little exaggerated. What do you think?
I think that global warming is very important to consider, but that would be a single factor analysis, is a defective way of analyzing how the world works. There are many variables operating all the time, and global warming is one of them.
Now, what does your organization, the U.S.-China Green Energy Council, do about global warming? I know your focus is on carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. What do you actually do?
Actually, we focus on U.S.-China collaboration to try to not only solve the climate crisis, but to take advantage of the opportunity it presents for us to work together and create a more robust economy for ourselves and for the rest of the world.
Is this people-to-people collaboration, or is there also an element of governmental collaboration?
Well, this is part of what we need to understand. In this current 21st century, we need to stop thinking so much about individuals and single countries, because it is one planet, it's our home for all of us. So we have to look at how we work together to make it a better place for all of us.
Considering the competition, maybe you could answer this, Cliff, considering the competition between nations that have been going on for so many centuries, is it possible to put all of that aside just because we might be threatened with extinction?
Well, I think between the U.S. and China, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. And of course, here in California, as on the Pacific Rim, we feel it in spades because of the large population of the Asian community already here. And people are already collaborating in that sense.
Now, what does the Green Energy Council do well? How is it distinguished from other environmental organizations? I mean, does it have really good contacts in both countries, or is it mostly an American Silicon Valley effort, which maybe has a few Chinese?
Well, I would like to say yes across all those, but I think the distinction that the Council has is that it provides a catalyst for ideas and projects that can be pursued across boundaries. And yes, we do touch the behemoth that we know as China in many ways, to include the government side, industry, and companies.
Now, China is very different from the U.S. because in China, the government can issue a decree and people have to follow it. In the United States, you have political opposition. You can't just issue a decree. So does this collaboration take that into account, the difference in how things get done in the two countries?
It's not that different, really. A corporation is a dictatorship similar to the Chinese system, and it's hard to get the workers to cooperate on everything. And I used to be in the Air Force, and that was one where it's supposed to be top-down, and you find out that people don't just follow orders.
And even in a single-party system like China, there are different elements and factions, and so they do have to achieve a consensus, similar to what we do on Capitol Hill. But that being said, I think they have a much more direct connection from their central government down to the provinces and the major municipalities.
Now, does the organization have a strong scientific basis? Are you coming forth with ideas that maybe would not be readily available to the leaders if it weren't for your efforts?
Absolutely. The fact that we're here in the Silicon Valley is part of the reason for that. I mean, we're focused on science, and we integrate science with social science and with nonprofit work and with political science.
And what are your upcoming plans? I know you have conferences. You have them in the United States. You have them in China. What do you hope to accomplish when you have these conferences?
Well, the Council's a young organization. We're only about 2 years old, and we're ratcheting up the number of activities that we engage in a year. For instance, we just had our annual conference in Palo Alto this past week, and already we're making plans to return back to China, to Shanghai, before the 2010 Expo. So the Council will be there with other political and business people.
Now, I know that you had an event in Washington, D.C. recently, not really a conference, but members of the group met with senators and congressmen. In fact, California Congressman Mike Honda, who is an honorary chairman of your group, gave a videotaped presentation in which he introduced you to the senators and representatives. And we just happen to have a videotape of Mike Honda's introduction. So let's go ahead and roll that tape.
I am hosting the U.S.-China Green Energy Council in Washington to draw attention to the unparalleled potential for clean energy partnerships. As economic powerhouses, the resultant U.S.-China carbon footprint calls for joint leadership capable of moving forward the global climate commitment while making green technology affordable and accessible for the most economically underdeveloped nations. Our response to climate change must articulate a way forward for the least of us, who will feel the most in terms of adverse impacts of climate change. By factoring the poor in our response, we lower the environmental and health risks from global warming and seize the opportunity to democratize energy. By that I mean one person, one vote becomes one person, one energy supplier, wherein energy supply is not controlled by a few utilities, but by every household. Consider our centralized energy system. Americans have limited options when it comes to energy supply, suffering market forces and fluctuating prices. In response to my state's electricity crisis, California residents are now selling their own renewable energy. Homes are topped with solar panels, which generate power and offset electric bills. This is putting power into the hands of the people. If America leads lowering the price for household-sized technologies, others will follow. Companies designing home-appropriate panels, turbines, or other devices can amass majority market share, then go global. We must motivate innovators to produce portable, affordable power, enabling citizens of the most autocratic countries to be free from fetters and equipping them with ways to harness the sun's, wind's, and earth's power cheaply. The reward for the developed world is enhanced security. Localizing your supply makes systems-wide sabotaging difficult. A country powered locally by individual households harnessing the sun, the wind, or other renewable resource is a country more secure with less risk and less fear. It is time to give energy to the people. This is what democracy looks like, power in the hands or households of the people.
Mike Honda made an interesting point there that he would like to see every home be able to manufacture all the energy it needs just from its environment without having to be connected to some external power source at all. Do you think we're anywhere near being able to do that?
Absolutely. In fact, today we can build homes that have a zero energy footprint and a zero pollution footprint. That's all technologically possible. It's just getting the political will together to do it. And in fact, California, AB 32, we have a requirement that by 2020, all new homes will have a zero energy footprint. And by 2030, all new businesses and large buildings will have a zero energy footprint. So it's not just generating energy for the grid or for others to use or for ourselves, but it's about saving energy, not wasting it.
You know, different sectors of the economy emit different quantities of pollutants. In fact, I think we have a slide which demonstrates that. There it is. So according to that slide, well, what's that telling us? It looks like buildings contribute the most. If you can see the time scale at the bottom, that goes from about 1950 to 2000. So that's a 50-year time scale. And the carbon emissions are along the left side. Transportation follows close behind. So it seems like buildings are the biggest source. So what might we be able to do about that?
That's right. And in fact, I mean, if we cut building emissions and building energy use, then we've already made a huge dent.
Now there's something called green buildings.
Yes, right.
So what is a green building? What differentiates a green building from a non-green building? In fact, we have a slide there showing how much we could potentially save on a green building.
Well, when you talk about a green building, in that slide, it says some things about that. If you do a retrofit of a current building, you can reduce the energy that it needs and the pollution that it creates by up to, it says, like 50%. If you build the house or a building with a design so that all the parts work together, it could be a zero energy building.
Now, is this technology mature today so that new houses built today would probably have this technology?
Some do. In fact, a Ohlone College in Newark, California is a zero energy building, the whole campus.
And I think Silicon Valley is sort of a leader in that field too. And I think a lot of the green aspects involves a lot of electronic sensing. So you turn on the lights automatically when the person walks into the room, and when there's no motion, then it turns off automatically. As soon as the person takes his hands away from the faucet, the water turns off. So we're talking about things like that, basically.
Right, absolutely. So technology is very important. And so as we improve the technology, we can be more efficient and less polluting.
And cars are also a big factor. And, you know, Cliff, you're the car expert. Where are we today with electric cars? People have been working on them for years. How close are they to being a reality that can compete successfully with conventional cars?
Well, I'm excited about the technology that we can bring to bear today. Electric cars, as you say, have been around for a while. I remember projects that were going on in the 1930s when you read back in history. But this is the first point in time where all of the major elements of electric cars are being manufactured today, that your batteries, your motors, and so on and so forth. And this provides us a way to break the mechanical bond that we have in the past with cars.
And I think we have a slide that illustrates two types of hybrid cars. Do we have, okay, so there it is. So these are two types of hybrid cars today. I think they both have gasoline engines and electric motors. One of them, like the Toyota Prius, for example, which is a very popular model, each motor has its own drivetrain, and that's the parallel type and the serial type.
Well, the difference between a parallel, which the Toyota Prius represents, is really you have two systems under the hood. You have both a mechanical engine and transmission, as well as a battery system that recovers energy and puts it back into the propulsion system. Whereas a series hybrid is you have a generator, not necessarily an engine that, as we are accustomed to today, that generates the power for electricity into the batteries, and then the batteries provide the electricity to the electric motors that drive the wheels.
And we have another slide, and this one shows a car that you actually plug into a wall socket. Okay, so there it is.
Those are called plug-in hybrids.
Okay.
Exactly. And to many folks, this represents probably a practical future, near future, because you're able to recharge your car when you come home at night for pennies instead of paying, $4 or $5 a gallon for gas.
Now, it looked like there was something in that picture that was a fuel tank. So does it also uses gasoline?
Well, this particular diagram shows a plug-in hybrid. Your hybrid vehicle has a generator, if you will, and that's normally some type of a small engine, auxiliary power unit, could be a microturbine, that then recharges the system if you run out of battery power.
Okay. Now, what are the big obstacles here? My understanding is that the biggest obstacles to electric cars are the size and weight of the battery, the short distance you can travel before you run out of charge, and the long time it takes to recharge once you've run out. How close are we to solving those problems so people will want these cars more than their gas guzzlers?
Now, given that I've seen a lot of stuff that has happened here in Silicon Valley, in Menlo Park, a company called Adura Systems in particular, other companies that are out there, I think we have the technology at hand. I think the biggest problem is culturally. How did you come to the studio today? Did you drive a car?
I certainly did.
And is it a sedan? Is it a SUV?
Well, it's a sedan.
Okay.
And I was the only person in it. All the other seats were empty.
Exactly. I mean, I came the same way, right? So when you think about it, as Americans, we're teaching the world sort of a bad habit because we drive around in cars with all this parasitic weight, right? The back seat is empty, the trunk is empty. Whereas in India and China today, we can at least provide different alternatives, a modular car system as an example, so that you break the bonds of bad habits.
You mean you remove the back seats when they're not in use? You remove the whole back end of the car?
It's simple physics. If you have a heavier, bigger vehicle, it's going to take more juice, more power to get you from point A to point B. Today, with electric systems, we have the technology that can break the car apart, modularize it, and perhaps you have a two-seater vehicle that you commute to work and back, and then you add on a module, like a van module, to take your family on outings. It's entirely practical today.
Can you do that yourself, or do you have to take it into the shop and you only change it like every year or so?
Well, I've seen systems where you can have quick connects and disconnects where you can add on these modules in a garage in under 5 minutes.
Does it look like China is going to be a major competitor internationally in the auto industry?
I think China and India have the potential to break a paradigm here. There are well over 20 car manufacturers in China. There's about 70 different bus manufacturers and truck manufacturers in China. So you have a huge market, untapped market, first-time buyers, first-time users that are going to make a global impact in the auto industry.
Now, I've heard that there are a lot of new technologies, sort of thinking outside the box, highly experimental, and the government is providing seed money to a lot of them. I read in the paper the other day, Stephen Chu, who's the energy secretary, says the government is going to provide $150 million for all these little startup ideas. And if 1 in 10 pans out, you know, they consider that a success. Do you know what any of these technologies are, or what some of the more promising ones might be?
Well, in the transportation arena, certainly going towards better and better density batteries is a key component of what DOE is funding these days. If you look across different state websites, like Michigan's as an example, they received literally hundreds of millions from the stimulus bill to work on things like batteries.
You know, I'm very interested in the China component of this whole thing. In fact, you recently held a conference in Beijing, and we have a video showing, it's sort of a montage of people giving short sound bites of their views of the conference. Let's go ahead and roll that video, and then we can discuss it in our final minutes.
I don't think there's a more important country that the U.S. could collaborate with and partner with than China.
Much of our solar sales are in China. Pretty much 50% and 50% of the world's solar panels are made in China.
We have more than 100 world-renowned experts in energy technology and policy come to Beijing to participate in this conference.
I am a volunteer for UCGEC. First, I have witnessed the growth of Chinese science and technology. The second, I have witnessed the growth of computer technology. Now we're going to witness the third phase of change in the growth of green energy technology.
The U.S.-China Green Energy Council is formed as a platform to facilitate business, policy, investment, research, and education collaborations in the U.S. and China.
I was unable to be here in Beijing for the Olympics, but I'm very excited that I have the chance to be here for the Green Energy Conference. I believe that the energy and talent of the people of China will help make this conference a great success.
We hope through their interaction with Chinese entrepreneurs and the local community that we could foster collaboration both from a personal perspective as also from a business perspective in the years to come.
You know, in the United States, the primary driver of technology has essentially been the profit motive. To what extent is that operative in China now? Do these companies have to make money to be successful, or can this be a top-down, command-driven economy?
Well, both. I mean, certainly you have to make money to keep your business going. But in the short term, you lose money sometimes. And that's what venture capitalists do. They lose money on every 5 out of every 6 companies they invest in. But when they hit a good one, they make money to make up for it.
Do they have the same kind of R&D in China as they do here? Because people will take a venture, they know they'll probably lose their investment, but maybe they'll make many times their investment. Do you have that sort of situation in China with venture capital, people taking personal risk in the hope of hitting a home run?
There are several venture capital firms in China as well. And Americans are investing in China, and some Chinese investors are investing in the U.S.
Do you think that people would be willing to accept a cut in their standard of living if it meant cleaning up the environment? Or are we so addicted to all of our creature comforts in our cars and our TVs and our trips on airplanes to vacation spots that we'd rather smother in garbage than give any of that up?
I think that's a false dichotomy there. Actually, if we could live better if we stop wasting so much, and as you imply, stop choking to death on our own waste.
Do our efforts have to be based on not putting further pollutants into the atmosphere, or can we do anything to get rid of the pollutants that are already there, or is it too late for those?
Well, I definitely believe that there's room for both. Probably I've been told one of the biggest savers of energy was the invention of the energy efficient refrigerator. That probably over the course of time that's been available, I understand it saved more energy than the entire output of China's Three Gorges Dam.
At the same time, we have to realize that there's more copper in landfills than there are unmined in copper mines. So we definitely can reuse a lot of those resources that we've been wasting.
Right. So you're optimistic about the future in our final seconds?
Well, I would certainly want to think that my kids and my grandkids will have a energy efficient future that.
Okay, very good.
More pleasant to live in too.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're going to have to wrap because we're just about out of time. Okay. I would like to thank my two distinguished guests, Jim Caldwell, Cliff Nakayama, both from the U.S.-China Green Energy Council. Good luck in all your work. I'm Marty Wasserman. Thank you for watching. Please visit our website at www.futuretalk.net. We'll see you again next time.